public folder after the session. Okay, so it's now recording. Okay, once you supply your username and password and click sign up on Databricks, again, you'll see the Databricks workspace dashboard here. So again, leave both tabs open for now, both the Fivetran tab and the Databricks tab, which will look something like this. Okay. Okay, quick thumbs up. Was everybody able to register for the Fivetran and Databricks accounts, or a quick thumbs down, or a quick post in the chat if you were not able to do so? All right, I do not see any thumbs down, and I do not see any negatives in the chat, so I take it we're good to go. So let's go set up the first Fivetran connector. As you know, the purpose of today's session is to show you how you can sync SAP data from using Fivetran from an SAP source to Databricks. Fivetran supports syncing from many different databases, file systems, events as well. We're going to use SAP data today. As you're all aware, SAP licenses are quite expensive, so we don't have access to an SAP instance for this particular hands-on lab. So what we've done for today is we have replicated a whole bunch of tables from SAP's accounts payable module and put them into a Postgres database on Google. So we're going to connect to a Postgres database on Google, but it will be actual SAP data that we're going to work with. You can follow this link here for more information on the actual SAP connector, but very quickly, I'll give you a look at what the SAP connector looks like. So if I go to my dashboard here and choose Add Connector, I'm going to pick the Databricks lab as my destination, and then I'm going to search for SAP. You can see a list here of all the different versions of SAP that we support. For today's session, this is the one that we're going to use, SAP ERP on HANA. But as I mentioned, we've replicated this data set temporarily to a Postgres database to use for the lab. But if I was to do this for real with an SAP server, all I need to do is quite simple. I need to install this Fivetran NetWeaver API on the SAP server. And this is how we communicate through the NetWeaver application layer in SAP. The prerequisites required are here. This is what you must have in place in order for this to work. And then you have clear step-by-step instructions on everything that you need to do to get this started. So all I need to do here is to provide the destination schema name at the Databricks destination, and then the details of the SAP instance, the IP address, the system number, client number, and so on, the username and password. We usually connect in this demo using an SSH tunnel, so I've got to provide the SSH details. We also support connecting through a VPN server, or also through private link if your clients are using Azure Private Link as well. This here is a unique encryption key that's generated by Fivetran. It's unique to this connector. If you're using an SSH tunnel, you would have to copy and paste this key and place it into the key registry in the SAP in the SSH server. And then once you've done that, you simply just click on Save and Test. And that's how simple it is to connect to and start extracting SAP data. So as I mentioned, for today's lab, we don't have access to that SAP instance. So we're going to use a Google, and just move some of this video out of the way here, it's getting in my way. Join waiting list option for SAP. Shrinath, where are you seeing that join waiting list option?
Yeah, once I select the Databricks, right side I search with SAP. So I found like join waiting list.
Okay.
You just showed right one. Yeah.
Are you going to keep going through the lab yet?
No, I opened the website Fivetran.
Yeah.
So once I click on the add connector, there I can find the SAP. So once I selected SAP ERP, I can see join waiting list option. There is a button.
Is that one that's referring to one of the preview connections?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Yeah, if it says preview, then it says join waitlist because it's in private preview right now. The one that you would normally use is this one here, SAP ERP on HANA, and then you can see the setup button. Now, we're not going to do that today because we don't have access to an SAP server. But if you wanted to test this yourself on an SAP instance that you have of your own, that is the connector that you would use here, not one of the preview ones. Just use this one, which is the setup.
Okay, thank you.
So for today, as I mentioned, we've replicated the data set to a Google Postgres instance. So we're going to add a Postgres connector instead in Fivetran. So we go to connectors and click on Add Connector. Choose the Databricks Lab again. So we'll do this for real. Add Connector. Choose the Databricks Lab as your destination. Select. And then in the search box this time, just as a matter of interest, the way you see in SAP, if you're curious about the Oracle sources that we support, you can literally just type Oracle into the search box there, and you get a list of all of the different flavors of Oracle that we support. The same with SAP, as you seen a moment ago, and even if SQL Server, you can see all of the different versions of SQL Server we support as well. For today, we're going to use Google Cloud Postgres. So just search for that in the box. You can see it's listed here, Google Cloud SQL for Postgres, and then click on Setup. All right, so when you search for Google Cloud Postgres, click on the Setup button, and then we've got to fill in the details of this Postgres connector. As with all Fivetran connectors, the first thing you've got to do is to give the schema a name at the destination. For today, if you could use your last name underscore first name underscore SAP underscore AP. Okay, just use that as your name. So I'm going to actually tag on something else. You don't have to do that because I've already got one called Kelly Tony. So I'm just going to tag on today's date just to make it unique for me. Okay, and then we've got to fill in the details. For your host IP address for the Postgres server, so we have 4 different Postgres servers hosted at Google Cloud for you to use today. If your last name begins with A to F, well then use this host IP address. If it's between G and L, well then use the second box. If it's between M and R, use the third box. And if it's between S and Z, use the 4th box. The only thing different in those boxes is the actual IP address. The rest of the configuration is exactly the same. So for me, my surname beginning with K, I'm going to use this one here as my host IP address for the Postgres instance. The port is the usual default 5432. The username is Fivetran. And the password is that big long string in there. The database that we want to connect to is called SAP Accounts Payable. This schema in Postgres contains the replicated SAP dataset that we're going to use for today's lab. Now, as I mentioned, this is only for today's lab. We're using this Postgres instance purely because we don't have access to an SAP instance. In the real world, you would use that SAP connector. Change the update method. We support 3 different methods for checking updates. One is this is for Postgres, the logical replication. The second one is to detect changes by XMIN. And the third one is to use Fivetran Teleport Sync. For today's lab, just change it to detect using XMIN. And then that's all that you need to do. So quick recap, your schema name, which will be your last name, first name, SAP underscore AP. And then the details from the lab document here that you can copy and paste in. After you've completed the form, you click on Save and Test. And if you've got everything in there correctly, it should validate the certificate. It's going to confirm, I have to confirm this TLS certificate that we're using for the Postgres. Click on Confirm. And then it will go through and validate the rest of the connection tests there. If you see a little warning on the XMIN, just ignore that for now. You don't need to worry about that. And then click on Continue. So now it's going to retrieve the schema from that database name that we provided, which was the SAP Accounts Payable. A quick check. Has everybody got so far up to here? Have they managed to connect by filling in the Postgres form, testing the connection, and get the list of 12 tables? Quick check, a quick thumbs down if you've not managed to get this far, or drop a note into the chat. All right, I'm not seeing any thumbs down or any messages. So let's assume you're all got this far, okay? So once you've connected successfully, you've validated the certificate, and you're now presented with the list of tables. These 12 tables are all from the accounts payable module in SAP. So we're going to leave all 12 selected and then click on Save and Continue here. Next, we're asked, how would you like to handle schema changes? The default is to allow all. So if anybody changes a table or column at the source, we automatically replicate that to the destination. You can choose to change it to only allow column changes, or if you prefer, you can block all schema changes. For today's lab, just leave it as allow all, and then click on Continue again. And then at this point, it's ready to sync. So just click on Start Initial Sync to kick off the sync of that data. Let's just quickly catch up here. All right, so there you can see this, you should see this active status with the first time syncing of the data for this connector. So that's now kicked off the initial historical load of all of the data that exists in that Postgres instance. So a little quick look at the UI here for this connector. This is the dashboard for this connector. You can change the view of data synced to look at what's been synced in the last hour or the last day or the last week. This is the schema we selected, the schema that's associated with this. If you expand any one of these, you have the option to change those. If any one of these columns happens to be personally identifiable information like a date of birth, you have the option there of hashing it so that it's not visible at the destination. Again, we won't do any of that today. We leave them all unhashed. Here you can see the setup of the connector, which has the default sync frequency of 6 hours. The majority of our connectors, you can change that up to run once every 24 hours or down to as low as a guaranteed 1 minute sync frequency. Again, for today's session, we leave it at the default of 6 hours. All right, just while that's working there, let's take a quick look. So a couple of cool features. You can pin your favorite connectors so they always appear at the top of your dashboard. So if I go back here to my connectors, you can see there's loads of them here, but if I search for the one I just created, this one, actually, I shouldn't have gone into it. So we go back there, we'll just search for that one. And then if we hover over it, you can star it there. So it pins to the top of the list for you. Schema notifications. If you want to receive a notification email whenever somebody changes the source and Fivetran detects it, you can check the send notifications box on the connector as well. So that's on the right-hand side here. Choose go into the connector. No, I should know this by now. Okay, I got to go into the schema. That's what it is. In the schema, and then the settings, and you can send notifications. So if somebody modifies a table or a column at the source, you get an email notification telling you about that change. Fivetran will still manage the schema change for you. You don't have to do anything, but that's just a notification to make you aware of it.
It's a very, very neat feature, that, Tony.
Sorry?
Very neat feature.
Yeah, it's cool because even though Fivetran won't break if somebody changes, we'll replicate the schema change automatically. We won't break the pipeline, but you may need to modify some of your visualizations at the far end to incorporate those new schema changes that come in as well. You know, so there could be something external to Fivetran at the data consumption layer where you might want to make a modification to reflect that schema change. So that's why we enable those features, notifications as well. You can check the status of the connector, as I mentioned. You can change the view from 1 hour to 1 day or to 1 week. So if we go back to the dashboard, change the view to 1 hour, you can hover over and you can see it's taking a little bit longer than it usually does. It should be already completed at this stage, so hopefully it won't be much longer. but I think we're good on time so far. So that's it for setting up the Google Cloud Postgres. You've just basically designed, built, tested, deployed, documented, automated, and maintained a data integration and data movement pipeline. So all in the space of a couple of minutes. It usually would be a lot quicker. Obviously, I'm going through explaining everything to you, so it took a couple of minutes more than it should. But hopefully you can see what we mean by that. Fully managed SaaS-based connectors that are no code, available out of the box. Average time to set up is 10 minutes kind of thing. You've just hopefully succeeded. While this is, before we can move on to the destination piece, don't forget you can follow this link here to the Fivetran documentation to learn about everything to do with that ERP connector here. So it's a pretty comprehensive review there for you. All right, just before we move to Databricks, let's take a look at the destination setup for Databricks in the Fivetran account. So if you go back into the dashboard here and click on Destinations, and then from the destinations, if you pick the Databricks Lab, which is the one we're using today, click on that, you can see all of the details associated with that, that destination. So it's got the server host name at Databricks, it's got the catalog we're using, the port, the HTTP path that we're using OAuth2 to connect, and so on. So that's the configuration of that destination. And then you can see the connectors that are associated with it. So we hopefully have you can see here, I can see Paul, Michael, Miguel, all have successfully set up their Postgres connector. All right. Just want to check in and see how it's looking. Any questions from anybody posted in the chat? Let me just have a quick look at the chat. Doesn't look like it, so it looks like we're doing good. I seem to have lost my mouse. Give me 1 second. Battery's gone.
While they're doing that, Tony, Michael had a question around the separation of environments in Fivetran and how they're visualized between dev and prod.
Yeah, good question, Michael. So depending on the use case and obviously depending on the client, we find with very large enterprise clients, particularly around financial services and some government clients, that you have to separate dev and prod. From the technology point of view with Fivetran, you don't need a separate dev and prod environment because you can add connectors at the start and you can run a proof of concept for 14 days for free against a production database. But if your use case or your client is insisting to separate the two, what you can do is you can use the Fivetran REST API set. Everything that you can see here in the UI can be replicated using an API call. So what a lot of our larger enterprise clients do is they would set up the dev environment, they would run all the connectors and test all the connectors in the dev environment, and then they would use the Fivetran API script to automate the release from dev to a separate production account, where they don't have to manually recreate all of the connectors again to point to the production environment. That process can be automated using our REST API set. I still don't have a mouse, so give me 1 moment. I think my portable mouse might have died. I'm just going to try get to my laptop trackpad without breaking the connection. So please hang in there for a minute. Yeah, my mouse died. Okay, so I'll have to use the trackpad from here. Okay, so the initial sync is still in progress here. It should have finished by now. So anyway, let's keep going with the lab. So we had a quick look at the Databricks destination. And the next portion is to go and log into Databricks and then start previewing the data set. Has anybody else successfully landed the data yet, or is everybody still waiting on that to finish? If you could post in the chat, that would be great. Or unmute yourself. Okay, good, Paul. So it's probably just Miguel is finished as well. Good. So rather than me wait on this one, what I'm going to do is, because I did some testing earlier on, and I mentioned I already had a schema here. So in Databricks, if you to check your destination, use this link to open the Databricks account and log on with the name and password you set up. If you've already got the tab open, on the left sidebar, click Catalog, then expand this catalog here and look for your schema, which should be called last name, first name. We tag on this on the end of it. This is the schema name at the source, and this gets tagged on to the schema name that you provided. So I'm going to look for one for my own one. I think I've got one from earlier on. So we go to Catalog, we expand the TD NDS catalog, and I can see this is the one that's currently working, and this is the one that I created earlier for testing. So if you expand on your schema and just click on any one of the tables and then click on sample data, and you'll be able to preview the data that has been successfully replicated. So that's how easy it is to replicate data. You just got to add the new connector in Fivetran, provide the details of the SAP server you want to connect to. And I know in this case we use Postgres, but in the real world, it'll be an SAP instance you populate the details on. And then you choose the schemas you want to replicate and you kick off that change. So that's the data successfully landed. If you go on then, we're going to create a query off that data. So select SQL editor from the Databricks menu and then choose create new query. So again, I go here, I choose SQL editor and I choose new query here and then create new query. To make it easy for you, I created a query that you can just copy and paste here. First off, you got to select the catalog you want to work with, and then your own schema in there too. So here I need to choose the catalog TD-NDS, and I need to choose my schema here. All right, once you've selected the schema, you can then copy and paste the query that we've created here for you. So just copy that and paste it in. This is going to look up one of the billing item tables. So when you paste in the code, just hit run, and it's going to select those columns for you. And there you can see you've created your first query in Databricks as well. All right, so that's creating queries at Databricks. We move on then through the lab. After running the query, you can preview those results. Now we're going to get into the really cool piece with Databricks, and this is how you can create dashboards. Really, really quick ways of getting dashboards together. So again, select dashboards on the left navigation pane, and then select Lakeview dashboards in the upper left right pane. So go to dashboards here. And from there, we're going to create a new dashboard. So Lakeview dashboards is what you want to select. It's already it's a new UI. Okay, so just make sure that it's on dashboards, not legacy dashboards. And then we'll click on create new dashboard in the upper right corner. So create dashboard. And We're going to rename the dashboard. So again, use your last name, first name. This is sales metrics. Actually, that should be, it doesn't really matter, but let's just call it billing metrics, not sales. So use last name, first name, billing metrics as your schema name. So in my case, that's going to be a tick in here, and you're going to call it billing metrics. And then to add some data, choose data up here in the top, and then click the Create SQL button. And again, copy and paste that same SQL code. So click on Data, Create from SQL, and then paste in that same code. All right, so once you've pasted in the data, let me move this so that I'm just landing on that each time. There we go. Okay, once you've got your query pasted, go back to the Canvas tab and click Add a Visualization at the bottom center. So from here, on the query, you go back to the Canvas and then Add Visualization. Drop the visualization into the top left corner of the canvas. And then to make it easy again for today, you could, if you wanted to, you could actually type in, you know, what you want in there, like some bracket invoice amount or something like that. You can type in what you want to put in the visualization. But for the lab, we're going to demonstrate a really cool AI feature of Databricks.
Hey, Tony, before we dive into that, Michael had a question around the compute consumption on Databricks. His query being that if we're just pushing data into a Delta table, why are we being charged to run a SQL query in the warehouse?
So let me read this question. In the dashboard, it says running a sync every minute will consume considerable compute on the Databricks side. Why is that? Yeah, so it's whatever compute is being used on Databricks. Running it every minute means if there's high volumes of data changing, then it will push up the Databricks cost. I'm not sure if it's compute costs, but it definitely will drive your Databricks costs if you have high volumes of change data syncing every minute. Is that a sufficient answer, or do you want me to get in touch with Databricks and or the Fivetran team with some more background information on that? I mean, I think it's to do with the compute resources at Databricks, you know, high volumes of change data every minute versus high volumes of change data every hour. If you don't have high volumes of change data, then the impact is minimal because Fivetran is only syncing, bear in mind, Fivetran is only syncing that change data. We're not syncing the entire data set every time. It's only the change data you got to be concerned about.
Yeah, so Tony, if I may, just real quick, because what I was wondering is more about just the general setup, you know, so why does Fivetran in general require a SQL warehouse when syncing data to Databricks? I think this is where I still have trouble to understand correctly why this is required, because that would obviously, imply, obviously cost considerations, saying, okay, if you use Fivetran in connection with Databricks, you have to kind of keep in mind that on the one hand, you'll have Fivetran costs, but on the other hand, you'll also have, costs on the Databricks side just for the connection, right, and writing data from your source systems using Fivetran to Databricks.
Yeah, so you don't have to have an SQL Server instance. That's what we're using today in the lab, but you can use the serverless option as well.
Okay, so it's possible to basically write data to Databricks Delta tables without actually having to start connect to a Databricks SQL warehouse.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, we're using the SQL warehouse in this lab today, but that you don't have to do that.
Okay. And maybe
You
just one
can you
follow-up
can
question.
also land it in a native ADLS tables
Okay.
in Azure, and then you can separately connect your Databricks queries and stuff to those ADLS catalogs as well.
Okay. Are there any advantages using a SQL warehouse versus not using one?
I'm afraid you've got me on that one. Probably a question for Databricks. Dan, do you know much about that? The difference between using a SQL Server or serverless, or is there anybody on the Cloudaeon team there that could feel that?
I can talk about some recent examples. So we do some work with a large client of ours. We land the data into ADLS, and then we use Databricks to move that through the medallion levels. We use a SQL warehouse to give faster query time for the reports that people are running in real time.
Okay, thank you.
So Dan, it sounds like whether you use a SQL warehouse or not really depends on the use case and what the client's performance expectations are. Would that be a fair statement?
It would be, the SQL warehouse performance is fantastic, but there are some cost implications to sort of balance out.
Gotcha. All right. Is that okay, Michael? Is it clear enough for you?
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right, so for this particular dashboard, we're going to use a really cool Databricks AI feature where Databricks will suggest, based on the query that we created, hey, do you want to see the total count by item date, by billing item date? So yeah, let's try that. Just click on that AI box, and it's going to create the code required to populate that cell, that visualization for me. It's a really cool feature. You don't have to use it. You can reject it and you can compose your own visualization in there. But basically, Databricks is analyzing the query that we created here, and it's making suggestions for us to populate in this visualization. So if we move on to the next one, that's one visualization. We're going to add a second visualization. And again, if we go here, add visualization, this time we'll drop it in the top right corner. We drop the visualization in there. And then this time it's going to suggest what is the number of items by billing document is what the AI is suggesting to me by billing item. So just to say, yes, let's accept that again. And again, Databricks is going to compose the SQL code required to populate that tile for us. All right, let's add one more visualization, and then we'll choose number of items by billing document as being the. Oh, I added the wrong one. Sorry, I added the text box. I did it again. Text box. Add a visualization.
It's that trackpad, Tony. That's what it is.
All right. What's the total? What is the number of items by client? So again, I'm going to select. All right. So I think, would you believe it? We had a 90-minute put aside for this, and we've actually gotten through it in 60 minutes. So that's the end of the hands-on lab. Just a quick recap. We created your Fivetran account, we created your Databricks account, we logged in, we connected to a Postgres SQL server, which had a mocked up or a replicated SAP dataset. In your own world, you would use a real SAP server and you would use exactly the same connection method. We replicated that accounts payable tables from the source to the Databricks destination. We then went into Databricks. We were able to preview the data, successfully landed in there. We then created a query and we were able to query that underlying data. And then we went in and we created a dashboard with some visualizations in there. And we used the Databricks cool AI feature to automatically populate those visualizations for you. So we still have plenty of time. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so I can see where my video has gone. There we go. And what I'm going to do is allow you all to ask questions so we can open up the floor and you can unmute yourselves if you want to speak. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, I would have another question. This question is around what's the retention time? Say, for example, I'm syncing data from SAP over to Databricks, and say, for example, there's something crashes downstream, and I do want to kind of resync that last increment that was written or that was supposed to be written to Databricks. Is there like a mechanism in Fivetran that allows me to do that with some retention time, or is that not possible?
So the answer is yes, there's a mechanism. So your question is kind of a twofold question. One is about the data retention period, the data retention time in Fivetran, and the other is potentially around either the source or the destination being not available. So the connector is temporarily paused. So I can talk about both of those topics. In terms of data retention, Fivetran does not retain any data in its infrastructure for any longer than needed. So by that, what I mean is once we extract the data at the source, it's encrypted at source. That's the first point. Fivetran is never going to allow you to connect to an unencrypted source. We will not sync unencrypted data. So the data gets encrypted at source and it's transmitted through the Fivetran architecture directly to Databricks. As soon as it successfully lands in Databricks, it's removed from any caching infrastructure in Fivetran. We do not store it once it has been successfully synced. So that's the first part of your question in terms of data retention. The second part relates to when a connector is temporarily paused or broken because the destination, for example, might not be available or the source might not be available. So how we manage that is Fivetran uses cursors all of the time. So whenever we successfully replicate records, we update the cursor. If either the source or the destination is temporarily unavailable, we save the last successful sync state, that cursor point. And then when the source or destination is available again, we keep polling it to see when it becomes available. When it becomes available again, we pick off from that cursor point forward and we guarantee the data integrity. There's no data loss.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions? You got a question, John?
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear it.
No, I don't have any questions, thanks. I'm just gathering information at this point. I'm not in a... I don't know enough to ask meaningful questions yet. Does that make sense?
Okay, no problem. Maybe I'll throw a question out. Did anybody... Sorry, was everybody able to finish out the lab and get to the point where they could create the dashboard in Databricks? Or did anybody not get that far? So I'm assuming that everybody that was able to access the email, to the registration email, managed to get connected okay. As I mentioned at the start, if you did have trouble any point through the lab and if you're still working on it, it will be available for the next 48 hours. By end of day Thursday, both of the accounts, the Fivetran lab account that you got and the Databricks lab account, both will be deleted on Thursday, end of day. So feel free to use it to play around with anything Fivetran. Make sure you get through to finish out the lab if you need to. But please do not do any real work in there because those accounts will be deleted end of day Thursday. They're just for the purpose of the lab. Dan, do you want to add anything there? Or?
I think it might be worthwhile, Tony, once you get that recording on your local machine, send it across. We'll send it out to the delegates today. So anybody who didn't get a chance to complete that first sync, they can follow along with the video and get it done in the next 2 days for the lab environments expire. If anybody wants to do more persistent testing after that, there are some options to do a more extended trial with both Fivetran and Databricks, which we can help you with here at Cloudaeon.
Okay. So thank you all for joining. I'm delighted to give you back a half an hour of your time. Feel free to contact me if you got any questions about Fivetran, or reach out to Reginald or Dan if you got any questions about Cloudaeon. We'd be happy to answer questions for you as you go forward in your journey.
Super. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Enjoy your 30-minute gift from Fivetran and Cloudaeon.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.